Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Healing Migraines Naturally podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Leslie Caesar, and I'm a licensed naturopathic physician, former chronic migraine sufferer, and I've dedicated my life to helping other women with chronic migraines rediscover a migraine-free life, all without new medications, ability to wean off of their existing medications, and do it all without taking a fistful of supplements. So welcome to the podcast today. You know, there's a word that's suddenly appearing everywhere right now. People who'd never heard this word a few weeks ago are saying it at the dinner table, it's in the group chat, it's in the comments, under a lot of posts, and that word is POTS. If you've been anywhere near the internet lately, you know why. There's a Netflix documentary came out in the middle of May, about a terrible case out of Ohio. A young woman, a speeding vehicle, a building, and two people who didn't come home. And at the center of her defense was a medical condition she said that she had been diagnosed with a few years earlier, and that diagnosis was POTS. So the claim was made that this condition made her black out behind the wheel, and that was the cause of the accident. So I'm not really here to talk about that case. I'm not a judge. I'm not a juror. I didn't sit in the courtroom, and I can't tell you what happened inside of the car or, what went on within her body that day. The court has already weighed in on all of that. That's not what my lane is. That's not what this podcast is for. But here is what is in my lane. Because of that documentary, millions of people have now heard the word POTS, and almost all of them have heard it in the worst possible context. They heard it as something frightening, something that makes your body dangerous, something that strikes out of nowhere and that nobody can really explain. And I have a lot of women in my world who have POTS or who have every single symptom of it without the diagnosis. So I want to do something a little bit different today. I want to take this word that everybody's suddenly afraid of, and I want to tell you what it actually is. Because once you understand what's really happening in the body, POTS stops becoming a mystery, and it stops being something to be afraid of. So why does this matter to you? So let me say first why I'm even bothering with this. When we're prone to migraines, there are other conditions that tend to ride along with the migraines, and I've talked about many of them before. The migraine is rarely traveling alone, and POTS is actually one of the most common traveling companions to migraines that I see. So if I look across the women that I work with, somewhere around a quarter of them have this set of symptoms to some degree, whether or not anyone ever gave them a formal diagnosis. So this is not something that's rare. It's not some exotic thing happening to other people. A lot of you listening know exactly what I'm about to describe because you live with this. So here's the everyday version. You're kneeling down, you're straightening up the toys, right? You're going to lift up the laundry basket, and you stand up, and the room tilts. You get woozy. Maybe there's like a little dark curtain that starts coming down over your vision. Maybe your heart gives a few hard thumps. Your heart starts to pound, and you say, whoa, I got up too fast. And you grab the counter, and you wait for it to pass. I've done that. There have been plenty of times in my own life in the past where I've stood up too fast and thought, whoa, right, here we go. I personally never pursued a diagnosis because it never plagued me to the severity that it plagues some people. This can be very severe for a lot of people. But I do know that feeling in my own body. So when I tell you that this is common, I'm not sort of reading it out of a textbook. Most people have felt at least a mild version of this. So that mild version and the severe debilitating version are actually the same phenomenon. It's just a matter of degree. And the whole thing has a perfectly understandable explanation. Hi there. I want to jump in real quick and tell you about my client, Beth. She was getting 15 to 20 migraines and headaches per month. And as you can imagine, this was impacting her work performance and her confidence. She also has 2 small children, and she was starting to feel like she was a horrible mom because she had nothing left for them at the end of the day. But she reached out and she booked a free consult call with me, and after I asked her about her migraines and her health history, I felt confident that I could help her. I help women uncover the root drivers of their migraines and follow a step-by-step plan to dramatically reduce the frequency by up to 90% without adding more medication or taking a bunch of supplements. So we built her personal migraine map, followed the plan, and now she will get 1 to 2 migraines per year, which she uses ibuprofen to treat if she needs to, versus up to 15 to 20 per month when we first started working together that weren't responding well to any medication. She just reached out to tell me that she got a promotion at work, she's on top of her career again, and has been able to come off all of her migraine medication. But most importantly, she's a confident mom again, and she's attending birthday parties at Jump Zone with her kids and saying yes instead of saying maybe later. I've worked with women like Beth from all over the United States who were told, this is the best we can do, but they were still willing to dig deeper. So if you're serious about changing your migraine story, go to drlesliecaesar.com/apply or tap the link in the show notes. And on our free consult, we'll map out why your migraines keep coming back and the first 3 steps you can take over the next 30 days. I do cap new client spots each month, so if the calendar is full, the doors are closed for now. But if you're done feeling helpless and ready to do the work to heal, pause this episode for 30 seconds and book that consult call now. So let's take the scary name apart. So POTS is an acronym that stands for Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia Syndrome, right? It sounds intimidating, but what I want to do with this, what I do with so many medical diagnoses, because in medicine, a large number of these intimidating names are not really explanations at all. They're just the symptoms written in Latin and Greek, written in medical terminology so that they sound official. So let's go word by word. So postural, that just means body position, specifically the position of your head relative to the rest of your body. So lying down, your head is level with everything else, right? You're on a horizontal plane. Stand up and your body is at the top, farthest from the ground. So postural is telling us that this has to do, this symptom presentation, the symptom pattern, has to do with a change in position, a change in the posture. So the next word, orthostatic, that refers to what happens to your blood pressure, when position changes. You'll usually hear it paired with the word hypotension, which just means low blood pressure. So orthostatic is telling us the blood pressure drops when you change position, when the posture changes. Third word, tachycardia. A lot of people recognize this one. Tachy means fast, cardia means heart, fast heartbeat. And finally, syndrome, that's the word they tack on at the end to turn a list of symptoms into a diagnosis. So we put it all together here. On a change of position, the blood pressure drops and the heart rate jumps. That's the whole name. Postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome is just a fancy way of saying when this person stands up, their blood pressure falls and their heart rate goes up. So that's not a cause, okay? That's a description of what's happening. And the difference between those two things is the whole story. So what's actually happening in the body? And I promise you, none of this is like woo-woo stuff. This is straight out of a physiology textbook. Same textbook that I had to memorize in naturopathic medical school, the same one that sits on the shelf of every medical doctor. So picture yourself lying on the couch. You're horizontal. Gravity is pulling on your whole body evenly, and your blood is also horizontal. Your blood is level, okay? So now, your phone dings in the other room, so you pop up because you have to go check your phone every time it dings, right? So you pop up, and the second you stand up, gravity goes to work. It starts pulling the blood down out of your head towards your feet. So your brain has to have blood. It cannot wait. So in that instant, your circulatory system has to raise its own pressure to push the blood back up into your brain against gravity. So how does it do that? Well, this is where your hormones come in. And this is the part that always gets skipped. So sitting on top of your kidneys, right at the small of your back, are your adrenal glands. So your adrenals make adrenaline and noradrenaline. You might know them as your fight or flight hormones, your stress hormones. So when you stand up, the adrenals squirt those hormones into your bloodstream, and they do two things. They squeeze your blood vessels tighter, and they make your heart beat harder and a little bit faster. So if you want more pressure inside of a closed tube, you squeeze the tube and you pump harder. So that's exactly what's happening. When all of that works the way that it is supposed to work, you don't notice anything. Your phone dings, you pop up, you go check your phone, and you're on with your life. Your body just performed, genuinely something amazing, and you weren't even aware of it. But your body is going to do whatever it takes to keep the blood in your brain because you don't want to lose consciousness, okay? If you lose consciousness, you've got a real problem. So the body has all these mechanisms to keep the blood in your brain despite gravity pulling it down to the ground. So what happens in POTS? Okay, so there's sort of two different pictures to POTS. So I'm going to go through both pictures. So in the first picture, you have adrenal glands. They're kind of worn out, okay? They've been overworked. They're struggling. They're lagging. They're sluggish, okay? So then when you stand up, they're a little slow. They're a little slow on the uptake, and they're slow to release those hormones. So your blood vessels don't get the message to tighten, and your heart doesn't get the message to pump harder, and then the blood just doesn't stay in your brain. And so this is where you have this extreme, right? I'm like spinning, I'm woozy, whoa, everything's going dark. People will have a sensation that they're going to faint. And at the extreme end, you absolutely can faint. That can absolutely happen. And just by the way that this curtain comes down over your eyes, it's not actually happening in your eyeball, it's in the back of your brain, in your visual cortex, okay? When the blood drains out, that part of the brain loses its fuel and the lights go off, okay? So that's what that curtain is. It's not actually occurring in your eyes. So in the second picture, this is where the adrenals are actually overstressed and they're on high alert. Okay, so this is where when you stand up, instead of this very, subtle cascade, right, just the right amount at the right time, your adrenals are like, oh my goodness, right? It's like a panic response, and they blast your body with these hormones. So now you've got a pounding heart. When you've got that adrenaline and noradrenaline, you're gonna, you got the pounding heart, you could start to feel shaky, you could start sweating, you might feel a little nauseous. People might think they're actually having a panic attack because it's a sensation very similar to a panic attack. So, your heart's pounding and, you're sweating and you're kind of feeling nauseous and, really woozy, and you're thinking, what's wrong with my heart? Am I having a stroke, right? It can get very frightening. So two different pictures. One person's adrenals are doing too little, and the other person's adrenals are doing too much, okay? But both of them are telling us the exact same thing. The adrenal glands are not in a state of health. Why are the adrenals struggling? That would be the next obvious question, right? Someone who's experiencing this, they go in, they try to get it sorted out, and unfortunately, it can be years before people are told by a medical doctor, what's going on. You have this diagnosis. Many times they're dismissed. They're given antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications. It can be a real nightmare for people to get help in the conventional space. And then, so once you get this diagnosis, it's like, well, how did this happen, right? And so this is where the official sources just sort of throw up their hands. So if you go look up POTS on one of the big respected medical websites, and I mean the most prestigious names in medicine, and you read their write-up on POTS, you'll find that they essentially call it a mystery. They really don't know what causes it. It's just one of those things. And frankly, that's a mystery to me because I just walked you through the known physiology of the circulatory system, the known biochemistry of how the adrenal glands work. It's in the textbooks, the very same textbooks those doctors studied. They go through this very same scientific training I went through. They learned this exact physiology, and then when the class ends, they close the book and they never open it again. So the patient walks out being told that nobody knows why this is happening to them. And think about what that does to a person, right? When the doctor tells you that your body is doing something frightening and no one knows why, the message you walk away with is, my body is broken. My body is defective. My body is doing weird, random things that even the experts can't explain. And, does that sound familiar? This is exactly the message that so many women with chronic migraines always get. My body hates me. My genes are bad. There's something wrong with me. It's not true. So let me answer the question that they call a mystery. Why would the adrenal glands stop doing their job correctly? It comes back to what I call the 3 principles. The 3 things your body needs to restore your health and maintain your health. And these 3 principles apply at every level of the body. The whole body, individual organs, even individual cell. So the first principle is that we have to get the nutrients that our cells need to the cells. So Your adrenal cells cannot manufacture adrenaline out of thin air. They need specific nutrients to build that hormone. Okay, we don't make adrenaline out of Starbucks Frappuccinos and unicorn dust. You can open a biochemistry textbook and read the list of what we know. I'm sure there's discoveries yet to be made, but you can read about what we know about what nutrients are required. So if an adrenal cell doesn't have those raw materials when you stand up off the couch, it can't make the hormone properly. It's going to do the best it can with what's available, but it's not going to be optimal. It's not going to be functioning in this wonderful, beautiful symphony that it's supposed to be playing. It's going to be playing kind of a clunky tune. Okay, so that's not just one cell, right? Imagine most of the cells in your adrenal glands are running short. Okay, you're not going to have the response that you need. So the second principle to restoring our health and maintaining our health is we have to clear metabolic waste material from the cells and get it out of our body. Okay, so every time a cell does its job and it builds something like a hormone and it releases it into the bloodstream, it generates waste material. I call it metabolic waste material. Okay, so it's like a workshop producing sawdust. Okay, that sawdust has to get carried out of the workshop, or pretty soon we're not going to be making high quality woodwork. Okay, so that waste has to get carried out of the cell and eliminated from the body. And moving things in and out of the cell just itself takes resources. Okay, you have to pump a lot of things in and out of the cells, and those pumps require nutrients too. So a major pump is called a sodium-potassium pump. So that's one of the major pumps that use potassium and sodium to run this little pump that moves things in and out of the cells. Hi there, I want to jump in real quick and tell you about my client Beth. She was getting 15 to 20 migraines and headaches per month, and as you can imagine, this was impacting her work performance and her confidence. She also has 2 small children, and she was starting to feel like she was a horrible mom because she had nothing left for them at the end of the day. But she reached out and she booked a free consult call with me, and after I asked her about her migraines and her health history, I felt confident that I could help her. I help women uncover the root drivers of their migraines and follow a step-by-step plan to dramatically reduce the frequency by up to 90% without adding more medication or taking a bunch of supplements. So we built her personal migraine map, followed the plan, and now she will get 1 to 2 migraines per year, which she uses ibuprofen to treat if she needs to, versus up to 15 to 20 per month when we first started working together that weren't responding well to any medication. She just reached out to tell me that she got a promotion at work, she's on top of her career again, and has been able to come off all of her migraine medication. But most importantly, she's a confident mom again, and she's attending birthday parties at Jump Zone with her kids and saying yes instead of saying maybe later. I've worked with women like Beth from all over the United States who were told, this is the best we can do, but they were still willing to dig deeper. So if you're serious about changing your migraine story, go to drlesliecaesar.com/apply or tap the link in the show notes, and on our free consult, we'll map out why your migraines keep coming back and the first 3 steps you can take over the next 30 days. I do cap new client spots each month, so if the calendar is full, the doors are closed for now. But if you're done feeling helpless and ready to do the work to heal, pause this episode for 30 seconds and book that consult call now. When the waste material can't get out of the cell gets clogged up. When the cell is buried in its own trash, it doesn't work right. In fact, it can get kind of irritated and twitchy and hypersensitive on a hair trigger, which is part of why you get that overreacting adrenal picture. The third principle is that we have to restore and maintain our resiliency and vitality. So at the cellular level, our vitality corresponds to the cellular voltage, the cellular energy. At the most basic level, a healthy cell holds a tiny electrical charge across its membrane, a real measurable voltage. As a cell gets, if we want to say, less healthy, that voltage drifts. It declines. They've actually measured this. And the cell then stops running at full capacity. So again, if I only have 50% of the electricity on the wire to my lamp and I turn the lamp on, the bulb is not going to burn as brightly. Okay, so when there's lowered intracellular voltage or vitality, it's not like the cell just stops working totally. It does the best it can with the energy that it has available, but it's not going to be optimal. There's just no way around it. So when those three things are in place, the adrenals do their job, you stand up to check your phone and you don't have a second thought about it. When one or more of those three things is missing, then the adrenals can't keep up and you get POTS. You get POTS symptoms. Okay, so this is not a mystery. This is a body asking for something that it isn't getting. So how do you get deficient in the first place, right? So here's the question that nobody asks. Everybody wants to talk about the deficiency. You're low in this mineral, low in that mineral. Okay, but how do you get that way? Because that's the part that actually matters. If you don't answer that, you're going to be chasing this forever. So let me name some of the players so that this isn't too abstract. Your adrenals, your heart, your blood vessels, to run that whole stand-up response, they lean on minerals: magnesium, sodium, potassium, calcium, and a handful of trace minerals in smaller amounts, things like iron and zinc and copper and manganese that act like spark plugs for building the hormones. So you don't need to memorize this list. You just need to know that these are the raw materials and a lot of women are running low on them. So how does that happen? I want to give you two reasons. And like most things here in medicine, they're hiding in plain sight. So the first reason is stress is draining them out of you. So when you're under stress, okay, like real acute stress, so, you get in a car accident, it's very stressful. Or that low grade, all day, holding everything together kind of stress that so many of us live in day in and day out, your body, your adrenal glands, pump out cortisol. And cortisol, we call it the stress hormone. You have to have cortisol to get through the stress. Okay, so, cortisol kind of has this bad name. Oh, cortisol, it's bad. It makes you fat. You have to have cortisol to get through stress. And cortisol does something to your minerals. It makes you hold on to sodium and it makes you dump potassium. So it throws off that whole mineral balance. Sodium and potassium, they're what I like to call sister minerals. There are some minerals that have to be in balance with each other. So not only do you have to have enough of the individual mineral, two minerals have to be in balance with each other. They have to be in proportion with each other. So potassium and sodium, these are sister minerals. Calcium and magnesium, these are sister minerals. Copper and zinc, these are sister minerals. They have to be in balance with each other. You have to have enough, but they have to be in proportion or balance with each other too. So what happens is that cortisol disrupts that sodium and potassium balance. Okay, so the system that's supposed to keep sodium and potassium where they belong gets scrambled when cortisol stays high month over month, year after year. So picture a woman who's stressed to the gills, running on adrenaline and cortisol, never coming down. She's draining her minerals every single day just by living the way she's living. Nobody ever told her that stress and her dizzy spells were connected. Not because it's quote unquote in her head and she should just calm down, right? If you just calm down, you wouldn't be so dizzy. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is a biochemistry that connects these two. So the second reason is you can't absorb the minerals that you're eating, okay? And so this is the one that almost never gets mentioned. To pull minerals out of your food, you need stomach acid, strong stomach acid, okay? The pH of your stomach acid should be 1. That will take paint off of a car. That's what you need when inside of your stomach. That acid is what breaks the food down and frees the minerals so that your body can actually take them in. Magnesium, calcium, iron, zinc, they all need that acidic environment. So no acid, no absorption. So you can eat beautifully and still come up short. Now, guess what one of the best-selling categories of drugs in this country is? Drugs that shut down stomach acid. The little purple pill and all of its cousins. Millions of people are on them, a lot of them for years, sometimes decades, and no one ever revisits it. You get put on it and you just stay on it. And that's the part that should make you stop. These drugs lower the very stomach acid that you need to absorb your minerals. The FDA itself has put out a warning that long-term use of these drugs can drive your magnesium down. That's not me on a soapbox, that's the warning label. The exact mineral your heart and your nervous system need to stay calm and steady, depleted by a drug tens of millions of people take like it's nothing. And it's not just the magnesium. The FDA also warns that long-term use of these drugs is linked to broken bones, osteoporosis-related fractures of the hip, the wrist, the spine. Do you want to guess the leading reason why? The same thing we've been talking about. You can't absorb your calcium without stomach acid. So shut down the acid for years and you can't pull the calcium out of your food, and your bones are where your body keeps its calcium. So the bones pay the bill. So same drug, same root cause, showing up in a different part of the body. And here's what I always think when I read those warnings. Okay, the FDA has warned us about magnesium, they've warned us about calcium, but what about all the others? What about your potassium, your zinc, your iron? Don't they deserve a press release too? Because they need that stomach acid just as much. So the FDA named the two that show up the loudest and the fastest, but the same drug shutting down the same stomach acid is starving you of all of the rest. They just didn't get their own headline. So don't think for a second that the damage stops at the two minerals that made the news. And here's the real irony. Why are people on these drugs in the first place? Acid reflux, heartburn. They feel the burn, so the assumption is, I've got too much acid, I need to shut it down. But a lot of the time, reflux isn't too much acid, it's actually too little. When you don't have enough stomach acid, your food doesn't break down properly, so then it sits there and it ferments is the nice way to put it. It starts to rot. Let's be real. Your food starts to rot. And it creates gas and pressure, and that pressure pushes acid up where it doesn't belong. So you feel the burn. The burn is real, but the root problem was actually low acid all along. And the fix that everybody reaches for further shuts the acid down. You're treating a low acid problem by making the acid even lower. And then we wonder why people stay stuck in this cycle. Now, please, if you are on one of these medications, do not stop your medications, okay? You need to talk about this with your prescribing doctor, and these drugs need to be weaned off very carefully and slowly because your stomach, unfortunately, will come back with rebound acid production if you quit cold turkey, and you'll feel even worse. And then you'll think I must need this, right? Unfortunately, getting off the drug isn't the whole answer either. If you don't actually restore your digestive function, if you don't fix why your stomach acid was low in the first place, you're still going to be miserable even if you wean off the medication. The drug was never the fix. It was just the lid on the problem. And this is exactly why taking supplements doesn't work, okay? I get asked all the time, well, why can't I just take a magnesium supplement, a potassium supplement? I'll just take the minerals. And I understand why a lot of people think that, but look at what I just walked you through. Right? You can take these supplements for years. I'm sure if you're listening to this, you've been taking a lot of supplements for a long time. But if you don't have the stomach acid to absorb them, what good are they? They go right through you, right? So you're flushing your money right down the toilet. And I mean that literally. And even if you could absorb them, if your cortisol is still high, you're still draining minerals out faster than you're putting them into the bucket. Okay, so you can pour all the supplements you want, the bucket never fills because it's leaking out of the bottom the whole time. So that's a major problem with the supplement approach. It assumes the only issue is that the mineral isn't there. But the mineral not being there is the end of the story, not the beginning. The beginning is, why can't you absorb it? And why are you draining it? Fix those, and the minerals from your food start getting into your bloodstream and landing and staying where they should. And that's what restoring your health requires. The bottle was never going to do it, whether it was a prescription or a supplement bottle. So what does this have to do with your migraines, right? So let me bring this home because this is a migraine podcast and you might be wondering why I've spent all this time on blood pressure and adrenal glands. So here's the question I want you to ask. If your adrenals can't do their job, if you've been suffering with these POTS symptoms yourself, like so many migraine sufferers do. If your adrenals can't do their job because you can't absorb your minerals, because stress is draining them, because the acid you need got shut off, then the obvious question is, right, what else in your body is running on those same minerals? What else is starved? by that same drained out, can't absorb situation. It's not just your adrenals, it's everything. Your adrenals are just the part that happens to make you dizzy when you stand up, so they're easy to point at. But the same shortage is hitting every system you've got, which brings us to your head, right? So there's two reasons why this matters for your migraines. First, those same three principles are what's behind your migraines too. So when I work with a woman who has both migraines and POTS type symptoms, I'm not running two separate projects, okay? The dizziness, the racing heart, the migraines, the heartburn, whatever else is on her list, they're all coming out of the same deficiencies in those three principles. So we go to work on the root. And what happens is the rising tide lifts all the symptom boats. The symptoms start improving together. So I'll tell you something I see again and again. The POTS symptoms usually get better before the migraines do. Migraines are a complicated event. It pulls in, the blood vessels, the brain chemistry, the digestive symptoms, sometimes the visual system. The adrenal picture, it's a little bit simpler, okay? So it tends to come back online sooner. So I actually love it when I have a client that has this dizziness because it's such an easy thing for her to track week to week. You don't need a special machine, you just notice. Was I dizzy when I stood up this week or wasn't I? It tells us if we're on the right road. So second, and this connects to that documentary that started all of this, that fight or flight response itself is a stressor on the body. So when your adrenals blast you with stress hormones, that's a real physical event. And for someone prone to migraines, that kind of stressor is exactly the sort of thing that can tip you over into a migraine. So that's what a lot of you would call a trigger, right? But what I always say, the stressor isn't the root cause. It's the last little push on a body that was already struggling to keep itself in balance. So it's Migraine Awareness Month this month. And the awareness that I actually want from this episode is this. So here we are. A documentary has put this word in front of the whole country. And the version of POTS that everyone just met is a very scary one, an unpredictable one, a version that sounds like your body is a danger to you and others. So I want to leave you with just the opposite. If you have POTS or you have the symptoms of it, the dizziness when you stand, the curtain over your vision, the heart that races when you get up too fast, your body is not broken. Your body's not weird. Your body is not a mystery, no matter who told you it was. Your body is doing exactly what it's designed to do with what it has been given to work with. It's asking you for something. And when you figure out what that something is, when you give those cells the nutrients that they need, help them clear what's clogging them, rebuild their voltage, the adrenals come back, the dizziness fades, and so often the migraines start to lift right along with it. You are not doomed or defective. You have some correctable blockers and deficiencies and missing pieces. That's it. And once we know what they are, we get to work and you feel better. And if your doctor's answer so far has been a steroid or a beta blocker, those drugs manage the symptoms from the outside. They don't ask why the adrenal stopped working in the first place. And that's really the only question that actually gets you well. So be careful about the messages you tell yourself, especially this month, Migraine Awareness Month. We're all being bombarded with the hashtags and the messaging and so on. You have to be very careful about the voices you let speak loudest. There's a kind of person who's always saying, oh, you shouldn't do too much. You're not really the kind of person who can do that. Be careful. Anything could happen to you. And then there's the kind of person who says, you know what? You can do this and you deserve to feel good. So when the internet is suddenly telling you that a condition you live with is frightening and hopeless, you get to decide what voice you're going to listen to. And I think you know which one I'd want you listening to. And that's what this podcast is here. So if you've got the migraines and the dizziness and you're tired of being told nobody knows why, come find me. There's a link in the description. Book a free call. We'll spend about 30 minutes on your situation and we'll put a plan together. Talk to you soon.